Sometimes the weather just doesn't want to play nice. The weather is just part of the adventure, so occasionally changes need to be made. This is the race report of the Snow Peaks 50, formerly known as the Squaw Peak 50. The Snow Peak 50 is a 50-mile loop on the east side of Provo in the mountains. Normally it's held and it goes up into the mountains around a peak and then back down. But because of the heavy snow load, this year is a little bit different. This year they had you go up into the mountains and then drop back down onto the benches, run along the benches, go to the south end of the mountain range and up a peak, around into the backcountry, back down, and then across and then back up to the start line. This is a run that I've kind of wanted to do for a little while. I have a couple of friends who've run it, and it seems like they're always talking about how beautiful it was and how much fun it was. My friends talked about how it was a hard course, but with beautiful views and just an adventure of a day. You know, naturally hearing them have fun, I want to have fun too. And so I signed up for it and was all super excited to go race this. I did my training, and I was in pretty good shape for, being the beginning of the summer. Also, due to the fact that the race is held in June, really made me want to do it because it's a great chance to keep training through the winter and then get a jump start on the training for the summer. But mainly, I just need a really good reason to keep on running in the winter. When I was training for the Bear 100, I had a great training winter. The roads were clear for the most part, and I got a lot of training in. This year was a little bit different. With record snowpacks, all of a sudden finding the time and effort and the desire to want to go out and run in a foot of snow really was waning. And so I probably wasn't in the best shape I could have been in, but the snow really presented some other challenges, especially for the race directors. Because most of the upper part of the course was still in deep snow, and with avalanche debris still on the course, they really couldn't hold the race in their typical area. And so they had to make some modifications for this year. So rather than being a nice consistent elevation climb, it kind of turned into a different kind of animal. It had three very, very distinct climbs. And so rather than having that elevation kind of sprinkled throughout the entire course, it gave you three very large helpings. So I stayed at the course hotel, but we had our pre-race meeting before, and the race directors give their typical, rah-rah speech, and they really kind of emphasize the fact that, they feel bad that they had to change the course, but that they wanted to keep with the challenge that the old course had and continue that even though they had to modify the course. So I go to bed, I wake up, I bum a ride with this guy up to the starting line, and it's always fun to talk to runners on the way up to the course, just kind of see the training that they've had and kind of compare it to yours. And unfortunately, I don't remember your name, whoever gave me a ride, but I'd love to hear how your race went, because I know the mileage that you had under your belt so far that year was significantly less than mine. And so it'd be interesting to see kind of the stories that you had, and hopefully you finished. I hope you finished. But it was a pretty rough course, so I'd love to hear from you if you ever watch this. We get to the starting line, and we kind of have to wander from the parking area over to the little park where the actual starting line's at. The problem is we get to the starting line and we're not sure where it's at. We know that the course runs along this path in the beginning. It leaves the park and runs alongside the river. And we're just, I don't know, there's a small group of people there, but there's probably like 30 of us there. And we know this is a much bigger race than just 30. So we're just kind of standing around wondering where the start line is. And then as the time approaches, it's like 2 minutes before, when all of a sudden we see a large crowd coming from, apparently there's an upper portion of the park that we weren't aware we were supposed to meet. So if there was a pre-race meeting, I guess up there, I guess we missed it. They start, and I know I'm not a fast runner, and I know I'm not, trying to beat anybody or prove anything. And so I think I was the last one through the gate, at least out of that initial group. I was the last one through. Just a chance to, run alongside, figure some things out. I found out my watch was giving me mile alerts every single mile, and so we promptly stopped and turned that functionality off because it's going to be a long day if I'm counting every single mile. We're running down the path. We had to make a few detours because there was an avalanche had come through and kind of wiped out a section of the trail, and so we had to kind of cross the river, run alongside a road, and then cross back over to get to the trail. We got down to the mouth of the canyon, and then we kind of started working our way up the side of the hill, kind of through this scrub brush. I don't know, it's always fun to have a sunrise when you're running. You see the sun come out, it's warm, and you're talking to people around you, hearing their stories, because everybody's very chit-chatty in that early conga line. And it was very much a conga line, and it was It was a long climb out of there in very narrow trails. It was probably a little slower than I wanted to go, but like I said, I'm not running for place or anything like that. I just want to finish. So we started going up the hill, and the sun comes out. You start peeling off jackets, start peeling off the headlamps. And it just feels good to be outside, especially up in the mountains. When you spend all winter training in snow and ice, and then all of a sudden you're able to finally be out running in the mountains, getting some good vertical in, not worrying so much about your footing because you've got good trails and there's nothing slippery. Kind of as you're climbing up this initial first hill, you kind of got a dirt road that you're kind of working your way up. And it was interesting because there's a lot of places where there were some avalanche slides. I think there's like 3 of them. Where you could see where a big, large path of trees had been blown through, and there's a significant amount of snow on the road. And so you're working your way over these snow debris fields, and you can kind of look up and see where it came from. You can look down and see where the avalanche went, and just kind of the destruction that it made. But it's fun to have these little obstacles that you have to try to figure out how to get around. No real danger, not worried about sliding down. So as you climb up to the top, you kind of get to the summit, and you start working your way down the hill to the other side. And let me tell you, this section of the trail was worth the entire race. I felt like I had died and gone to heaven, and I imagine the trails in heaven must be just like this, because the sun's coming up, you see the big Wasatch Mountains in the background, and you're running down this trail, and there's grass fields all along the side, and it's just beautiful. I can't figure out how people just haven't built houses all over this place, because it is the most beautiful place. I think it's probably in the top 5 places I've ever been for beauty when it comes to running. So if you ever get a chance, this one spot is worth the entry fee to this race. And so at this point, this is where I believe that the course kind of deviates from the original the original Snow Peaks 50 course, and had to go to the alternate course. And then you drop down Fish Canyon. Drop down Fish Canyon, you start seeing a lot of people coming up, because I think it's about 8 o'clock in the morning now. It's a little ways into it. You see people starting to come up the trails, start to see a lot more foot traffic, because it's a nice Saturday morning and it's beautiful outside. So of course, why wouldn't you just go for a hike? But you get down to the bottom, you take a right, and you start running along the foothills. It's kind of fun running along the foothills, because this is pretty much where most of my training happens for, at least during the winter, because you don't really have a whole lot of upper elevation you can get to, at least safely with a lot of snow. And so you run along the foothills a lot. So you see houses on the one side, and you're kind of going up and down, and you're winding in and out of canyon crevices. And it's a lot of fun. It's beautiful. It's not super steep. There's little portions that it's not flat. Don't get me wrong. But you're running along, it's beautiful, plenty of things to see, people in their backyards, doing yard work or whatever. I'm running along the bench, and it's starting to get kind of warm. It's not too bad, but you can tell it's going to be a warm day. So I'm running along, and there's a very large climb, well, I thought it was large. I didn't realize it was this large, but I get to the bottom of the bench towards the south end of the mountain range. I'm hoping to meet my wife at the south end of the mountain range at the aid station there, so I can get my poles, and that way I can have some pole assistance getting over the mountain. Not required, but I know it's a hard one. It's going to be tough. They usually are, and it's nice to have poles on something like that. I also have learned from experience that when there's an uphill climb involved, I always need to make sure that I take a third flask of water, so an extra 500 milliliters of water. So I'm loaded pretty heavy, 1,500 milliliters of water, or 3 flasks loaded up. And I started climbing this hill, and man, at the pre-race meeting, he was talking about one guy, and he said, "You'll be cursing his name halfway up this hill." And let me tell you, it wasn't halfway before I started cursing that guy's name. I'm pretty sure this was just I don't know if a deer path is the right word, just a little trail that just went up straight up the side of the mountain. And it was brutal.
That feels good, doesn't it?
A lot of times in the courses that have elevation gain but not quite so steep, you can power hike through it and kind of set a moderate pace. But on this one, it was hard even just to walk. It was up. It's like, I don't know, double step stair climber for that entire course, or that entire portion of the course. But it was one of those things, you just keep going, and you think you get to the top, find out it's a false summit. You just get angry for a minute, commiserate with your fellow runners around you who are gasping for air like you, and you keep hiking, up to the next fault summit. I think we had like, I want to say 4 or 5 fault summits. It really felt like it was never going to end. For some reason, there's a celebration also in the town of Springville that's just down below. And, at first it was kind of fun to hear like the parade and stuff like that, but I'm not going to lie, they had a fire engine or an ambulance siren going for literally, I don't know, pretty much the entire climb up. And I don't know, it wears on you a little bit after a while, hearing that same thing over and over, especially when you're already kind of miserable. And when you're miserable, you kind of get in that woe is me stage and everything makes you even more miserable. So I hike up to the top of the mountain. I get to the top and I realize this is the actual top, which is nice. I start heading down just a little bit, probably 500 yards. And a runner next to me is like, "Hey man, do you have any extra water?" And I was like, I looked down, and I burned through two full flasks. And I got about 75% left in my other one. And I was like, it's downhill to the next spot. I could sacrifice a little bit. So, a little bit of good karma, always a good thing. But I gave him the water, which I'm sure he was extremely grateful for. But I did find out, it was a little bit farther to the aid station than I thought, which it kind of always is. But I had enough. You just have to ration it out. But once it seems like you don't have enough, all of a sudden you get really thirsty and you want a lot more. But I worked my way down the trail, lots of switchbacks, kind of working your way down to this aid station. Get to the aid station and load up with water again and just, camel up a little bit. And it feels so good. The hardest, what would come to be the hardest part of the course was over. And so now I could actually, enjoy it. And this part of the trail was fantastic. It's a little bit rocky. You're kind of running down this little valley. It's more of a crevice because it's not super wide. It's just really kind of narrow. But it was beautiful running down it. There's a guy, I'm not sure who you are, but he was running. He had some sweet American flag shorts on, and he was carrying a large flag, like a serious flag, and he was going really good. So kudos to you, man. I'm sure you've got a cause, and if you watch this video, leave it in the comments. I'm sure people could link to it because you've definitely put forth some effort and got some attention. So I'm proud of you for what you were doing. But going down to the bottom of this little section right before we go back to the aid station, it was fun talking to other people. There was one particular guy I was talking to. This was his first 50, and I've probably run, I think at this point, like 4 of them, and 100. So I kind of know a little bit about stuff, and so it was kind of fun to stop and share stories about, tips I had, and we were kind of bouncing ideas off of each other and tips, and getting to know each other. It was just a lot of fun. But we get down to the bottom, we start working our way across the bench, and then it starts getting really hot. This is like in the afternoon, like 2 o'clock. The sun's just beating down. You're on the shoreline trail there, and so you don't really have any shade, and you're exposed, and there's not a whole lot of wind, and it's just cooking down on you. I switched shoes just for a minute just to try out some new shoes. I don't know. It's hard once you find your shoe, the Hoka Speed Goat 4s. Yeah. And I just realized they weren't that good, so maybe that made it extra miserable. But I got to the next aid station where my wife was at, and I swapped my shoes back over to my Speed Goats and just continued going down along the trail. It's nice when aid stations have ice when it's really hot, and they can just kind of scoop it and throw it down in your pack, or you can wrap it up in your buff on your head. Just find ways to keep cool. Start heading back up Fish Canyon, and it's a lot slower because you're getting kind of late in the race. You've probably got, I think it's like 13 miles left maybe. You're getting kind of tired. You've been out, it's been hot, you've done some serious climbs, and you've still got some more climbs. You just kind of, have to muscle down and kind of get through it. But I think at this point, at least everyone around me seemed like we're all kind of feeling it a little bit. There's moments of running, but the majority of it's hiking, especially as you're going up. It kind of takes a little detour. It takes you up around onto the bluff where you can kind of get a beautiful view of the valley, kind of your last goodbye of that race before you drop back down into the canyon. Running back into the canyon, there was one particular corner that was very not well marked, and me and I think 4 other people kind of ran past it. Luckily, I didn't run too much farther past it. They had ran all the way down and around before someone told them that they were in the wrong spot and they had to go back up and find this little trail. Unfortunately, it just wasn't marked very well. It's one of those things that I've come to find out that my watch can guide me a little better. A heads up to the race directors, make sure you mark that corner well, because we were kind of missing it. But we started working our way back down the canyon, and if you watch this channel at all, or you know me, this is the part of the race where I don't do well. It's the last final downhill part, and it was rough. It's pretty much a creek bed with boulders, probably about this big, the whole way down. And so you have to be very careful where you stand so you don't roll your ankle. And there's really no place on the right side or the left side that you can kind of, shimmy on. You can't really bounce back and forth. You just kind of have to walk on it. And it's rough. Climbing that mountain was tough, but this was by far the part that I least like. And granted, it's pretty late in the race. And so at this point, it always seems like I get to this point and I think, why am I doing this? I need a new hobby. You just start to, you get not feeling good. I think you start getting a little low on calories, but you just kind of hate everything a little bit. But it's just like everything else. You just keep going and it goes away eventually. You just got to keep going forward. Once I get to the bottom, I get back down to the trail and you start running along the trail. And, after a little bit, I start feeling better again. I'm not so tired. I've got some food in me. I know it's getting kind of late in the day, but I'm not really worried about cutoffs or anything like that. Maybe I should have been, but I wasn't aware of any cutoffs that I needed to be worried about. But start running along the river, cross over the snowfields again, and I kind of get to this, you start feeling a little bit okay, and then you start getting a little competitive. And so I'd be walking along and I'd see somebody behind me and they'd be running, and I'd think, no, you're not going to pass me. All of a sudden, I got competitive with people I don't compete against. And you're not going to pass me. So I'd start running. And so it was probably I thought I had 2 miles left. But I think it was like the last 5 miles maybe. I was running, legitimately running pretty fast. All because I didn't want the people behind me to pass me. Sometimes stubborn pride comes in handy. And this is probably one of those times where it's like, okay, if it makes you do better, go for it. And the truth is, I didn't know the guy. I feel bad that it made this other guy feel, bad. But at the same time, it is a race. And so I figure if you're going to race, it might as well be the last 2 miles of the race. But I ran pretty fast and definitely pushing it higher than I should, but also knowing that I've only got 2 miles left. So if, the candle burns out and I am toast, then I can just walk and he'll pass me because, my pride's not too strong for me to not let anybody ever pass. I just need to have a good reason to let them pass. But finish the race, cross the finish line, always a wonderful feeling. That final 100 yards where your family's there, they join with you, you cross the finish line, you're cheering, hugs, just a sense of relief of knowing that this one's done. And they usually have some good food, so you sit down, take a break, and just lock up. Your body has been running for so long, all of a sudden it stops doing what it was doing and just won't run anymore. In fact, it won't walk either. And so you old man get out of the chair and you start walking back, and you get to the car and just kind of sit in pain for a little while until you get home. And unfortunately, it was like an hour and a half drive home, so it was kind of an uncomfortable ride home. But it's one of those things that when you're done, especially 1 or 2 days later, you look back and you think about how hard it was, you think about the adventure you had, you think about where you went and the people you meet, and you just, it goes from being, this is where the type 2 fun goes from being not fun while you're doing it to being really fun when you look back, because you had such a great adventure. And it's nice when, the weather was good, it was hot, but it wasn't raining, there was no safety issues, we didn't have to worry about lightning or anything like that. And there's always good people, out on the trail. That's probably one of my favorite things to do is always stop and, not stop, walk or run and talk to people, find out their stories about, their jobs, what got them into ultra running, because ultra running always has a story. Nobody ever just does it because they were bored. And, there's usually a reason they met somebody or they wanted to try to do something because it is hard. But it's a great race. It was very well staffed. It breaks my heart that I couldn't run the actual course, and we'll have to put that on the list for next time to go run the course again when it's the official course. But for an alternative course, it was rough and it lived up to the hype. It was beautiful and it was hard. So yeah, kind of what I was expecting. So if you're looking for a race that's fun and enjoyable, if you're looking for a race that's hard and you're looking for something with beautiful views and great people and well-staffed and a great director, this is a great race. Hope you enjoyed watching this. Hope you got a chance to kind of see what this race was like, at least the alternate course. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the comment below. If you want to learn more about some of the other races I've done, check out this link below to a race I did called the Bear 100. It was my first 100-mile race and probably a video that I spent the most time on. But thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Have a great day.